Hello and welcome to the RPG Academy podcast reviews. My name is Michael, and I'm here today for a review of The Crew, The Quest for Planet 9. This is a new game published by Kosmos and designed by Thomas Singh. So The Crew is a cooperative trick-taking game with elements of limited and specific communication that sort of reminds me of Hanabi. And if you are someone that has watched my channel for a while, or especially listened to my podcast, you know I love Hanabi. It's probably my favorite game. I absolutely will play that game any place, anytime, anywhere. And The Crew sort of moves along into that area. It doesn't quite get there to me. This is not a Hanabi killer or a Hanabi replacement, but it's got enough elements of that game that it's going to be high up on my list. And this is a game I've already enjoyed playing with my family, and I will continue to do so. Before we dive into the game, I want to thank Kosmos for sending me a copy of the game to do this review with today. So thank you, Kosmos. So what is The Crew? So as I mentioned, it's a cooperative trick-taking game. If you're unfamiliar, trick-taking games, they've been around forever. You've probably already played them under some circumstances, but maybe not cooperatively before. So the idea is that one person will be the commander of the game. I'll get into that a little bit. And they're going to start off by playing a card from their hand. And there are 5 different suits that the cards come in. They're color coordinated, so you have blue, green, pink, and yellow, and they go from 1 to 9. You also have the rocket suit, which looks like a rocket and goes 1 through 4. Now, the rocket cards are considered trump, so they will always win the highest among them if more than one is played. But you're supposed to follow suit. So if someone starts with a yellow card, then you have to play a yellow card if you have a yellow card. If you don't, then you can play any card you want. And if it's not a rocket card, though, you cannot win the trick. So basically, you can't win a trick unless you follow suit, unless you use the rocket card. But you have to follow suit if you can. Higher numbers trump lower numbers. So where the game gets complicated, and in my mind interesting, is that there is a task system, and it gets much more complicated. I'm going to give you the very basics of it. That in addition to the cards that you will have in your hand that you will play, that are very close to regular sized poker cards. I think they look a little smaller to me than poker cards, but close. And again, these cards go 1 through 9 of the various suits. There are also symbols, so if someone has an issue distinguishing colors, that you can use the symbols as well. But you have these smaller task cards, which are much smaller, but they have the same numbers on the back, same colors, except for the rocket cards. It's the 4 colored suits, 1 through 9. So what's going to happen at the beginning of the game, it starts off very simple. The game comes with 50 missions that are progressively more difficult to achieve. But the first couple are actually really easy. Well, I should say it should be really easy. They can get complicated, but it should be easy. You're going to divide out all the cards, the regular cards, to each player. So the game is designed for 3 to 5. There is a 2-player variant. I've not played the 2-player variant, but I looked at the rules. I would say only if you have to play the 2-player. I think definitely 3 or 4 is the sweet spot for this game. I've played it with 4. I play with my family. So you're going to divide up all of the cards. It's possible that one player might end up with an additional card. If so, that card just won't get played. It'll be still in your hand or in that person's hand at the end of the game. So then you're going to deal out a specified number of the tasks face up. Whoever has the 4 of rockets is the commander, and I think that stays consistent through all of the missions, though what the commander does can change. And the commander will always be the first to choose the tasks among those that are out there. So you're looking at your hand and you see what cards you have. There are, let's say, I think the first mission is 2 task cards are face up, and the commander will choose one of those to take into their hand. They'll take onto their side. That becomes their task. They now have to try to win the corresponding card to the task that they chose. So in this case, this is the pink. Kind of looks purplish here, but I think it's supposed to be pink 4. So this means in order for us to win, the commander, first person to pick, has to win the trick in which the 4 pink card is in. And then the next player to their left will choose the next task card, which, just looking at them, might be the green 9. Bad color choice because I have a green screen by me. So this is where things get interesting, because you're not just trying to win the tricks, you're trying to win the specific tricks that you are assigned to win by the task system. And the other players will know what cards you're trying to win, because they can see that it's in front of you that, hey, Michael needs to try to win the pink 4 and Valerie needs to try to win the green 9. The commander will be the first person to go, so they're going to set the suit by choosing to play one. Everyone has to follow suit if they can. If they can't, they can play whatever they want. And they want to make sure, if they can, that you win the trick that you're trying to win. But it gets more complicated, obviously, as you go. There is also a very limited form of communication. I mentioned it kind of feels like Hanabi in that regard to me. But it is very, very limited and very, very specific. You cannot do this in the middle of a trick. So once a card has been played, you can't do this until that trick is over. But you can do it really any other time. So you could start the game by doing it, or you could wait 5 turns in. But you're allowed to take one of your cards from your hand and lay it face down in front of you so that everyone can see that you have that card. Then each player also has a walkie-talkie communication token. It is green. Again, that doesn't show up very well. The other side is red. In later missions, there might be some stipulations on whether you can use this at all, or you have to get so far into the game before you're allowed to use it. But for the first mission, you can use it however or whenever you want. So you're allowed to take this token, green side up, and place it on top of your card in one of 3 specific places. If you place it at the top of your card, you are communicating to everyone at the table that this is the highest pink card, in this case it's pink, that you have in your hand. If you place it in the middle, you're telling the table that this is the only pink card you have in your hand. And if you place it at the bottom, you're telling the table that this is the lowest pink card that you have in your hand. You're only allowed to do this if it's true. So if I had the 1, 2, 3, and 4 of pink, then I could not put the token in the middle because it is not the only pink card that I have. Couldn't put it at the bottom because it's not the lowest, and I couldn't put it at the top because it's not my highest. So in that case, I could not have chosen this card to communicate. If the truth of this card changes during the course of the turn, you're not allowed to move the token. So if I put it at the top, because this is the highest pink card that I have, but I play my one earlier, so this is now the only pink card I have, I'm not allowed to move it to the middle. It has to stay where it was originally. Hopefully the rest of the table will be able to remember that I played the one already and what this means. So if the truth of this card changes, you're not allowed to change it. But I may not be able to play this card because too many things are true. Again, I have too many of these cards. But let's say 5 turns into the game, now this is my only pink card. If I haven't already chosen a card to communicate, because you can only do this with one card throughout the entire game, then I could choose to lay it down and say, okay, now this is the only pink card that I have. And so that's where the limited and specific forms of communication comes in. Which card of your hand do you choose to communicate, if at all? When do you choose to communicate it? And what do you communicate about it? And I can see where this could be one of the areas where you get pretty good if you're playing with the same people multiple times on when and how and what you communicate. So for example, if I have the 8 and the 9 of pink, and I play out the 8 card and I put it at the bottom, this is the lowest pink card I have, I'm giving them basically 2 pieces of information. I have the 8 and I have the 9 of that particular color. If I put the 6 out there and I say it's the lowest one I have, I could have the 6 and the 7, the 6 or the 8, or the 6 and the 9, or I could have all 4 of those because it's still true that it's the lowest one I have. So I haven't played it enough to get a good grasp of how to give the most information with the one clue and the one way we can give clues that we have but it's been interesting to play around with that. I particularly have two young kids, a 9 and a 10-year-old, and they have a grasp of the game, but maybe not a high level grasp of the game. My wife really liked this game, which for me is a bonus because she doesn't like a lot of the games. She likes Hanabi, she loves Pandemic. That's her favorite game that we play. Uh, but this is a game that she actually enjoyed, and I think we'll get to play it more, which also obviously makes me happy. It's also a cooperative game, which is one of the things that I really particularly enjoy, those types of games. Again, especially because I have younger kids, and I find it's easier to play with them when we're all working together towards the same goal. Goal, I should say, not gold, but maybe. So it ticks a lot of boxes for me. It's definitely a game I can see me bringing out to the table more than once, and introducing some of my other adult gamer friends who aren't hardcore into gaming like I am. So it's got a sort of a casualness to it because it's a trick-taking game that a lot of people have played those styles of games before, but it being a cooperative version adds a little bit of an interesting twist. Where things get truly complex is as the missions progress. And the book says, there's 50 missions. They kind of tell a story because the game is themed around that you're a space explorer is trying to find a rogue planet in our solar system. But you can play them in any order that you want. You can revisit certain ones. If there's a particular mission that you just have a lot of fun with, you could just play it 10 times in a row if you really want to. But there is a logbook where you're supposed to keep track of how many times it takes you to play a particular mission and, just kind of see how the game progresses. But where things get complicated is in certain missions, they have even more restrictions. So you may have to play out 4 tasks. 2 of them have assigned a token that tells you they have to be taken in a specific order. So this particular task has to be the first one that is completed. If you complete another one first, you lose. This one might be the first one, and then a different one has to be the second one. So they have to be taken first and second, and then all the others can happen in the order. Some of them may say things like, this task has to be completed before this task, but not necessarily before any of the others. So they could be the last 2 as long as the first one goes before not the first and second, but the before and then after. There's an omega token, so it has to be the last trick that was taken, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole gamut of 1, 2, first, second, third, and fourth, before, middle, and after, omega. And then there's other things where you have to take the tasks blind, so you don't see what you're getting before you take them. There are some where the commander has to assign them to people based off of a yes or no question. There are some where you're still allowed to give communication, but it doesn't, you can only give it after the 3rd trick has already been taken. So basically later into the game. There are some where you can't use those tokens at all because communication is broken. There's some where the commander has to take all of the tasks, and there's some where the commander can't take any tasks. So there's just a bunch of variety and variability that come in the later stages of the game that make them more and more complex. The first time I played it, I think we got through the first 5 tasks pretty easily. We probably talked more than we should, which isn't that unusual when I play Hanabi with a family either. Less so when I play with other adult gamers. But with the family, we're a little bit more reasonable. But yeah, I think we got through the first 4 or 5. We played it a couple times. The rules are simple, but they can seem complex, again, when you're trying to learn a new game and trying to teach it. So I did have to reread the rules, and there were a couple things that we were doing a little bit wrong. But for the most part, it's a simple game. It's trick-taking. There's only 4 suits, and then the rockets, which are trump. The complexity comes from the order in which you have to do them, as well as who has to get them. Because that can be very difficult, where I have to take a card and I don't have the cards I need to do that. So anyway, short review, probably already too long. I like this game. I like it a lot. I would probably give this a solid B plus A minus. It's not a Hanabi killer for me, which again, for me is like one of the best games ever made. I absolutely love it. But it scratches some of the same itches. It's a different type of game. It's a game that more people are probably familiar with, the trick-taking aspect. And I recommend you pick it up. I think it's probably on Amazon. I think it's like $15. I probably should double check that, but I didn't. So bad, Michael, there. But it's a small box game. It's very reasonable. It's a lot of fun. 3 to 5 players, cooperative. Those are types of games I'm always looking for. And I think you and yours will have a lot of fun with this game, and I hope you'll pick it up. So thanks for watching and listening, and hopefully I'll see you at the table. Thanks, Anne.